Back in January, I believe it was, we had Greg Abbott with us, and we get to do the flowery introductions and all, but this time he's here as a candidate, so it's just a normal introduction. We have Greg Abbott. Please come up. I'm sure you guys already know who he is, and he's going to speak about running for governor of Texas.
Thank you, Julie. It is the realization that this mic is not working. I'm switching mics. I can always just talk loud enough, but instead of shouting at you, I will speak from this microphone. It is, Julie, great to be back with the Northeast Tarrant Tea Party, and great to be in a state Senate District 10 that's going to go back to Republican hands after this next election. Julie, thank you for recognizing the veterans. Right before I came over here, I participated in a ceremony at the Dallas-Fort Worth National Cemetery, where I helped to honor our veterans and the role that they have played in our lives. And the comment was made that they bury about 16 veterans in that cemetery every single day. And the question is, you wish you could just reach down and shake the hand of each of those men and women who served this country. But the reality is that you can't. But there is something you can do. What we can all do, even though we may not be able to shake the hands of the veterans who fought for us, we can live lives that fulfill the freedom they defended for us. That is what the Tea Party does every single day, and I want to express my deep gratitude for you and your fellow compatriots across the state of Texas who are fighting to ensure that the conservative values that have made Texas great will continue on for decades to come. Now, the reality is it's going to be a challenge. You've heard the reports that operatives who have worked for Barack Obama are coming to the state of Texas to turn Texas blue, to make Texas more like one of those California, Washington, D.C. style governments. But I've got news for Barack Obama. Tea Party patriots beat paid operatives every single time, and that'll happen again in this next election cycle. Well, I want to visit with you about three things. One is I want to cover a little bit about just a few of the things that I've worked on as your Attorney General. But two is I want to tell you about policy initiatives that I rolled out for the first time 2 weeks ago, and then three is to let you know about new policy initiatives that I'm laying out for the very first time tonight. But let me tell you, it's been an honor to be your Attorney General, to fight for the values and principles that you stand for, the values and principles that I've seen on the backs of some of the T-shirts some of you are wearing. To fulfill those values, I've had to sue Barack Obama 30 times now to fight back against his overreaching efforts. I have fought for the 10th Amendment, for state sovereignty, and for your individual liberty. The very day Barack Obama signed Obamacare into law, I met him at a courthouse where I filed a lawsuit challenging that law. I knew not only did it violate the United States Constitution, but also I could see then, back in 2010, the economic havoc that it would wreak on this nation. And I agree with what Governor Perry said on Sunday. Obama needs to admit that he perpetrated a fraud on America when he sold that program to us filled with lies, and we will continue our fight to try to tear down this wrong-headed law. Well, more than a dozen of those lawsuits that I filed against the Obama administration have been lawsuits challenging the illegal actions of an overreaching EPA that's trying to crush jobs, especially in the energy sector, right here in the state of Texas. And I've also filed a lawsuit against Eric Holder himself because he is preventing Texas from enforcing our voter ID law, a law which it turned out proved to be no problem whatsoever. But we need that voter ID law because, let me tell you, voter fraud is real. I've prosecuted voter fraud across the entire state of Texas. We've had dead people casting votes, live people voting twice, and foreign nationals registered to vote illegally. Let me tell you, voter fraud is real. It must be stopped, and we will take my case against Eric Holder all the way to the United States Supreme Court if we have to prevent cheating and illegal voting here in the state of Texas. Now, I've also fought for your Second Amendment rights. In 2 cases that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, we fought back against the liberal argument that the Second Amendment was limited only to arming a militia. You're exactly right. Turned out their argument was exactly wrong, and ours are right, because we argue the Second Amendment guarantees an individual right to keep and bear arms, and we won both times. But the argument I enjoyed more was the argument that I had against Piers Morgan when he came to Texas. When he came to Texas to debate Ted Nugent and myself about our right to keep and bear arms. And I told Ted Nugent, we stopped debating the British about our right to keep and bear arms back in 1776, and we're not starting over. Well, I just want you to know that as your governor, I will apply the very same kind of tenacity and the same very commitment to our Constitution as I fight for the future of this state. For example, 2 weeks ago, I rolled out the first of what's going to be multiple policy initiatives, where I'm talking about fighting for the future of this state. The policy initiatives that I rolled out focused on creating more jobs in the future and crafting a catalyst for a new era of economic opportunity in this state. My plan is intended on controlling the size of government, stimulating the private sector to create even more jobs, and to let you, our fellow Texans, keep more of what you earn. Let me go through just a couple of these policy initiatives. 1, to protect taxpayers from the harsh effects of government growing too big. It's time that we have in Texas a constitutional amendment that limits the size of the growth of our budget to no more than population growth plus inflation. This will ensure that we protect our budget not only for the next budgetary cycle, but also for the next generation. Couple that with another constitutional amendment, one that will give the governor greater veto authority. The governor has to have the ability to ensure that we live within our means and we cut the spending when sometimes legislators are not able to do so. The third thing on this platform focuses on the rainy day fund. That is our savings account. That money has to be there for a long, long time to make sure we prevent that account from being raided to be spent on core government functions. We need to limit it to these 4 things. 1 is unforeseen shortfalls in revenue. 2 is to reduce existing debt. 3 would be expenses related to state disasters. And 4 would be one-time infrastructure payments, only if the use of that does not reduce the rainy day fund below 7% of our total budget. Together, these measures will ensure that the rainy day fund does not turn into an ATM to be used whenever passions rise for legislators to spend more money. Now, one reason why Texans are so frustrated about taxes and spending is that money sometimes intended to go for one purpose winds up being spent for something altogether different. Take transportation, for example. We need to stop diverting transportation funding away from building roads and maintaining those roads. Money devoted to transportation should be spent on roads and nothing more. Under my administration, we will get that done. We must also tackle our growing debt. Most people don't realize how deeply in debt the state of Texas is. Texas has the second highest local debt of any of the large states in the country. Only New York has more local debt per capita than Texas. Even California has less local debt per capita than we have here in the state of Texas. Well, to get a handle on that debt, you, the voters, should have access to more information. That information should be provided to you on the ballot itself before you vote on any more debt. You should know what your debt is before you sign on that dotted line. And to keep you better informed, I propose that all taxing entities be required to post their financial information online so you get to see it real time, real easy. Now, the last thing I want to do is to reform the way that we have the Sunset Commission operate. It was intended to abolish agencies or shrink the size of agencies. In reality, it's just turning out to be a perpetuation of agencies. So we need to put it in the hands of the people who matter the most. You, the citizens of the state of Texas. I am proposing a citizen commission on government waste to reduce the size and scope of our government. The reality is that government is supposed to be the servant of people, not its master. In order for us to have our priorities straight, we must have citizens at the head of the table making the decisions on the future size and scope of government. People in this room are the kind of people we need sitting at that table. Well, tonight I am unveiling my second policy initiative. This is really the second large stroke of our vision of what we want to see for the future of the state of Texas. Before I unveil that, though, I want to tell you about some issues that will not be part of this policy initiative. It's going to be a part of future policy initiatives I'm going to come back and talk to you more about later. The things I'm going to talk about later that I'm not going to go into great detail tonight, one is education. I didn't want you to leave here tonight thinking Abbott isn't talking about education, because I'm going to have an entire platform based upon education. When I do it, I'll be letting you know more about how we have to have more quality teachers and principals in the classroom. How we have to get away from teachers being forced to teach to the test and allow students to really be truly educated. How we need to get away from a cookie-cutter, one-size-fits-all approach to educating our students. And how I will, as your governor, drive a stake through the heart of Cisco. And I will never allow Common Core to exist in the state of Texas.
Amen.
Another issue I'll be talking about later, but I just want to let you have some insight on right now, is that I will have a plan to do what the federal government has utterly failed to do. I am going to secure our border. Our priorities are wrong when we live in a state that stops a valedictorian from recognizing God in a graduation speech, but does not stop the cartels from streaming across the border. I will have a plan to put a stop to that.
Amen.
But my focus tonight is to lay out for the very first time my new set of policies that focus on what I call we the people. The threat to your freedom is more than just government growing too big. It also comes from government turning into Big Brother, invading your privacy, taking your property, and threatening your liberty. Government agencies like the NSA, like the IRS, like the EPA, are increasingly using tools to look at our emails, to tap into our phone calls, to look at our financial information or our health records, or, as we have learned as it concerns Tea Parties, to investigate our political communications. Government is going beyond trying to protect us. Government is now using its own power to protect itself from political dissent. Well, to protect Texans, from these big brother type tactics. My We the People plan includes privacy protection, it includes ethics reform, and it includes a heavy dose of protecting your freedoms. The first part, it is time to draw a bright line around your personal privacy and your private information. You'll be astonished to learn what I'm about to tell you. Many state agencies in Texas collect information about you and then sell it to private businesses without first getting your consent. Let me give you a couple of examples. The Texas Department of Motor Vehicles keeps records on 22 million vehicles and drivers in Texas. That information was sold 2,500 times last year to businesses like collection agencies, banks, towing companies, and private investigators. Another example, the Texas Department of Health Services sold information concerning 27 million hospital visits. One business bought and resold that information to 100 customers just last year alone. This use of your private information must stop. This is your information. It should be given away only with your express consent. So I will champion a new privacy protection that prevents the sale of your personal information unless you expressly agree to it. Now, of all the information about you, the information that's most personal, the information that is most unique to you is your DNA. Your DNA belongs to you. And no one else has a right to access that information without your consent. But the reality is that advances in technology are threatening that privacy right. You know, as John Locke wrote, every man has a property right in his own person. Well, I'm going to work to fulfill the modern day enactment of John Locke's goal. I believe it's time to create a personal property right for your DNA. You should have control over how your information about your DNA is used. Currently, 4 states in America have already acted on protecting personal DNA. I'm going to work to make sure Texas becomes the 5th state to protect your DNA. Now, we all know that Big Brother is not only collecting and selling your information, he's also watching you as you drive through traffic lights. Now, both the advocates of red light cameras and their detractors have a point. One emphasizes safety, and the other emphasizes privacy. But I believe that it should be up to you, the people, to decide whether or not red light cameras are right for the community. So I propose changing the law to allow you, the voters, the option to repeal red light camera ordinances by voter-led initiatives. You should have a right to determine whether or not you're going to be filmed when you go through the traffic. Now, all that said, there is one area where I believe there should be less privacy and more transparency. And that's in the area concerning your elected public officials. These are people who are supposed to be your public servants, not people who are using their positions to line their pockets. You deserve to know more about how they're making their money and who they have personal, private contracts with that help them line their pockets. That's why I'm proposing that all state elected officials be required to disclose more about their sources of income and to disclose any contracts they or their family members have with any state agency or any local governmental body. The light needs to shine on public officials who are profiteering off of our public system. And while we're at it, we also need to eliminate loopholes that currently exist that allow legislators to vote on legislation in which they may be able to personally, financially benefit. They're supposed to be there working for you, not for their own bank account. And you also deserve to know more about where their campaign contributions are coming from, especially as it concerns powerful interests that try to pour big money into election in the closing days of that election. So to end this practice, I'm proposing that candidates should not be able to spend contributions of $5,000 or more in the final 30 days of a campaign until that contribution is disclosed online. Would you say?
Excellent.
Good luck. Yeah, I wanted you to say that because that's going to be my closing point. I'm going to come back to that good luck comment. Hold on to that. Now, another practice at the Capitol that must end is using tax dollars to hire lobbyists to lobby for school districts or school boards. Using your money to lobby for more of your money is a conflict of interest, and that practice must stop. Well, in addition to protecting your privacy and requiring greater transparency for public officials, we also need to do even more in the state of Texas to protect your own personal liberty. Well, just as I have been an ardent advocate to protect your Second Amendment rights in my role as Attorney General, I will fight equally as hard as your governor to ensure that you retain the right to protect and defend yourself. And that is why I will support and I will sign into law open carry and campus carry laws here in the state of Texas. Speaking of freedom-based issues, I think there is no government-led threat to freedom more dangerous than the threat that we've seen in the Obamacare law. We should have the freedom to make our own health care decisions without facing federal penalties or fines. Well, to do even more to protect my fellow Texans from the onerous burden of Obamacare, I will support legislation that prevents creating state exchanges that try to implement Obamacare. And I will work to make it illegal to use any state resources to implement that flawed law. Well, in closing, let me just tell you this. You all know as well as I do that there is an agenda in America that threatens your freedom. An agenda that is trying to grow government even more and trying to tap into your wallets and run your lives even more than it does now. And an agenda that is trying to bring those liberal policies to the state of Texas. Well, for every agenda, there must be a counter agenda. The reality is that we can and we must protect the freedom that has made the United States of America the greatest country in the history of this world. But to do that, it takes more than words or thoughts. It takes warriors. It takes patriots who are willing to stand up and fight back against the liberal agenda. You all are those patriots. You all are those warriors. You yourself said, two of you said, as I was going down my agenda earlier on, good luck. I think what you were saying on some of those items that I want to see passed, and more that I will be unveiling as this campaign progresses. There are going to be entrenched forces in Austin, Texas, who will fight back against these changes. Fight back against trying to restrict some of the powers that be in Austin, Texas have. Well, I am prepared to go into battle to fight for your liberty for limited government and for the free enterprise system in this state. But this is a battle that I cannot win alone. I need you, the Tea Party patriots, by my side, fighting for the future of this state. And what I know is that if we are fighting together, we can keep Texas the land of ideals and values that is the greatest people to inhabit this earth, the people of Texas. So thank you all. Thank you for the role that you play. May God bless you all in our fight to keep America great. Thank you so much.
Let's shake his hand, Jake.